Cheating wrecks lives. If you've ever been cheated on, you know the gut-wrenching pain. If you're the one who cheated, you know the guilt, or maybe the thrill of possibly getting away with it. If you're the one who's the side piece, well, let's just say playing second has its own price. But here's what nobody tells you. Every single person in this whole thing involved plays a cost. They pay a cost. And tonight, we're exposing the real consequences of infidelity, the kind that go deeper than just getting caught. Buckle up, because we're about to get into it. Let's get it. Hey, what's going on, good people? Welcome back to Man Talk Mondays. I'm Derek, the thought engineer, here with my man, comedian John Yogi. How you feeling, man? Need one of them horn.
Yeah, my horn broke.
It's broke. No, I'm
good,
with
man.
you. I'm with you.
Good.
Listen, we about to get into a hot one for you. Tonight, we talking about infidelity exposed, the ugly truth behind cheating. Infidelity exposed, the ugly truth behind cheating. Now, we wanted to bring back one of our more popular guests, right? Because we kind of touched on this at one point, and anywhere I put out a video or a clip or anything, people were responding to it. Some people were actually like, hey, they fussed at us. They was like, listen, y'all didn't interview her right. Y'all gotta get her back. So I said, listen, we gotta get Miss Genesis Martin back so we can really deal with this subject and really pull from her insight. So joining us for this episode, we have licensed therapist Miss Genesis Martin returning with us. How are you doing, Miss Genesis?
Hello. I'm doing well and glad to be back on Man Talk Mondays. I'm ready for this.
You ready? Okay. All right. I just hope everybody that's listening is ready, because we know this is a huge topic. This is a huge topic for a lot of people, especially people dealing with relationships. It's kind of hard to get around these days. So if you have ever dealt with infidelity at any point, any time, I want you to just hop into the chat and just in the comment, just say me. Just say me. We want to know if there's something that touches you in any kind of way, whether you're the person who was cheated on, if you're the one that did the cheating, or you were the side piece.
Me.
You are. We just want to know. So hop in there and let us know. So we gonna get right into it. We're gonna get right into it. So looking at the standpoint from the person who's been cheated on, right? The person who's gone through the suffering and gone through the pain. So Miss Genesis, what are the most common effects, the most common emotional and psychological effects that happen to a person who's been cheated on?
Yes. So this touches me because in my practice, I do deal with this a lot with couples. This is typically what brings couples into couples therapy. The psychological effects of that can be, seriously, and I'm not being dramatic, PTSD. We have anxiety that comes from that. We have depression that comes from that. We have self-esteem takes a blow. We have self-value takes a blow. So, I mean, I can go on and on and on. And these are not, those aren't light conditions either, because people can suffer from the blow of being cheated on for years to come. And the person who and you know what, this has nothing to do with gender either. So this is the man or the woman can have these symptoms as a result of being the person who was cheated on.
So do you actually have men that come to you? Do men actually seek counseling, or is it more of a thing that women do? After being cheated on?
Or this, after being cheated on. Over the years, there's more women. But there have been men, and where I found that is that within the couple, both people cheated on each other. So within that, the man was cheated on, in my experience, right? I haven't had any men come by themselves. They didn't present like that, but then eventually we uncovered that they have been cheated on.
Oh, so that wasn't the initial thing, but eventually after talking to him, it came out that they had been cheated on. Now, I know this is a crazy question. I'm trying to think about even how to phrase it. Who copes better from what you can tell? Who copes better? Do men cope better? Because we tend to take stuff pretty hard, I believe. Who tends to cope better with just handling the actual event?
That's a fascinating question, because it depends on what you mean by cope, right? So in the aftermath, if let's say a woman is cheated on, she turns inward. A lot of times she's questioning herself. What did she do wrong? What is it about me? Why doesn't he want me? What is it about this other woman? She starts questioning herself, and she starts to exhibit the depression more. Whereas what I've seen is that men are more angry about it. They will blame the women. Men are usually the ones that will leave quicker than women will. So women,
really,
yes, men are usually out of there. At least in my experience, what I've seen. But the emotional toll, men have the emotional toll. They will tend to distract themselves and not really get into the deep work of the pain initially. So they'll distract themselves, and I see that pain comes later. So it might come months after, when the distractions are no longer able to distract. Then the men start to really deal with that inner pain. But men are usually the ones that seem to cope better in the beginning.
Okay. We seem to cope better, but we just better at distractions.
Better at distractions. Yes. Yes. And I will note this is that I think that women are able overall to handle heartbreak and move on and be willing to open up again. Whereas men, that one time, they may never open up again.
Yeah. We kind of talked about that on our last show. We talked about how to ruin a good man. And you say once we have that one heartbreak, typically women behind that typically gonna end up paying in some shape, form, or fashion. They're gonna end up paying for what happened to us in that one event. So we don't. So what are some of the coping mechanisms of a person that's been cheated on? What do people do to typically cope with this?
It depends on the person, but the bad news, right, first, is that a lot of people will use some self-medicating, and this is just the truth. People will drink, you know what I mean? People will smoke a little weed, and I don't want to just say smoke, because weed is in, little gummies, little Chex Mix, right? So people, because they don't Chex Mix.
Let me write that down.
Yes.
Chex
Mix.
I never heard of that one. Okay.
Cookies, So, people will self-medicate, because what that does is it brings down those thoughts, right? Because a lot of times what's happening is people are running in their mind what it looked like, what really happened. And so that becomes, it's devastating, actually. So people will sometimes cope in those ways. Other people will seek therapy, right? They want to do things a healthy way. Some people just, lean on their tribe, their group of friends. If they have a solid group of friends, they'll lean on those friends to get through. So it really just depends on the person.
Okay, so I want to know if can a person really truly heal after they've been cheated on, or do they just kind of go through the motions?
This is a great question. People can heal. Let me say that again. People can heal. Now, when a person has been cheated on, if they receive acknowledgement of their pain, validation of their pain, And if they understand the why, then that relationship has the chance of moving on.
But do you have to, and see, this is where this is where it's tough to me, because I want to.
Yeah.
So, but everybody plays a part in cheating. Do you have to acknowledge? Do I have to acknowledge my part in it as well? Because if somebody cheated on me, I played a part in it, whether it be small or big. And do I have to acknowledge that as well? To say, well, maybe perhaps, what do I have to do in it? You say I heal, but what is my responsibility for my healing?
Yes. Okay. So
question. That's an interesting one.
it's a fascinating question. So I'm going to first deal with the first part of that. You said that if you were cheated on, you played a part in that. So I disagree with that statement. And let me tell you, and I'm going to tell you why. I'm not just going to disagree. I'm going to tell you why. Because if we are, I believe that you played a part in the relationship and maybe the problems that have ensued in the relationship to make it what it is. Okay. But a person has a choice. They have choices. There are 4 main choices, okay? Of what you can do when a relationship is unhappy and on the rocks, right? You can do nothing, right? And stay in a miserable relationship. You can leave, right? You can work on it, or you can cheat. So those are like the 4 main choices that you have. So cheating is a choice when you're unhappy. So I refuse to put it on the person who was cheated on.
Since you got those other 3 things, I'm not going to fight. I'm not going to, because you gave me other choice, and you're absolutely correct.
We got to give people the choices, because
you do. You're right.
I think the default choice is always.
Yes, you're right. Right.
But you got more choices than that, right?
Right, you got more.
I ain't happy. I'm cheating. You know what I'm saying? You didn't do this. You didn't do that. But no. Let's go to therapy. Right?
Okay, I'm not.
But let's figure it out.
I think the therapy it seems to be an acknowledgement of something I don't want to acknowledge. I don't want to acknowledge how bad this hurt me, because I don't want to be in this weak, vulnerable place. And so therapy sometimes can seem like I'm just bowing to this weak, vulnerable place. And so this coping mechanism of cheating. Also, you did. Oh, this is what we doing. So, okay, I'm gonna show you how I get down. Just that whole train of thought for a person is. And so if the person is not responsible, the one that's being cheated on is not responsible for anything because of the 4 choices. And you said it's about the environment of the relationship.
She didn't say they weren't responsible. That's not what she said.
Because I was just wondering, because if there's an alienation of affection, like people always tend to say, or something, are they just looking for excuses to justify what they did? Is that what they're doing when they come up with this?
So I'm not saying, and like John said, thank you, John, because Derek, he's trying to get me. I didn't say that they weren't responsible for the deficits in the relationship. They could be 100% responsible for the deficits in the relationship, but they're not responsible for the actions of their partner. I'm serious about this thing right here. They're not responsible for the choice that their partner makes. I like that alienation of affection. So that happens. And I'm the first therapist to be like, listen, you are the only person that your spouse can get this from. Right. And they need this, right? Yeah. They need air, water, shelter, physical intimacy, sexual intimacy. So if you don't give that to them, what is your expectation of what they're going to do next?
Oh, wow. This is what you asked?
100%.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
100%. You get the raw real with me. The raw real. Now, I'm glad they're in therapy, because then we talk about the fact that there are options, right? If you're the alienation of affection, come to therapy before you decide to cheat, because then we start talking about that. That makes sense. That starts to make sense to the person. Like, they might cheat. You know what I'm saying? Or they might leave. They might. So you start to be able to let them see from a third party's perspective that you're in a dangerous place right now.
But when,
John, what you got?
Well, because most of the time women are not going to step up to the plate and take onus on that. They're not going to and I don't want to say most of the time, but in past instances, women they don't be accountable. They don't want to be held accountable. And they're certainly not going to say, you know what? I withheld the booty. I did that, and you're right. I did not help. They're not going to succumb to this may have been just as much as my fault as it was yours. And I'm as a therapist, because I know you've gotten it, whether or not you're going to tell us about it or not, it's different. But I know you sit there and you be like, wait a minute, come on, we got to do better. And I'm simply trying to figure out, how do you get them to come, because they may even do it with you one-on-one, but they're not going to do it with him sitting there. So I'm trying to figure out, how do you get them to tell me I'm crazy? Tell me, John, you are so crazy right now.
No, you're not crazy. You're not crazy. Finish the question for me.
Well, I just want to know, how do you get them to come on along with the husband sitting there? Because there can be no healing with both of them if both people don't say don't acknowledge the part that they played in it. How do you get them to, as a couple, to come on and you did this and you had that? How do you? I don't really know what the question is. But I
think if I'm hearing you correctly, it's like, how do you get the woman to take accountability for the environment that was created where he cheated?
That's all I meant.
Yes. So I have couples like this right now. And the way that I talk to them, and I'm not as bad with them as I am here. Well, sometimes, but what we'll do is I will ask them, we don't go and start just with the cheating, because first of all, I'm going to lose the husband, because he's going to be in there like, oh, I'm getting ready to get beat up. No. We talk about what changed in the relationship. And as we talk about what changed in relationship, I'm hearing some of the things that have happened on both sides, right? And then I get to the point of, well, to the woman, if she was the one that was cheated on, well, why did you do this? What led you to be in this position? And then back to, what was your expectation?
I like that question.
In doing this? What was your expectation of him while these things were happening? Because whether it's withholding sex, whether it's just being cold, whether it's not, not providing his love languages, that's a real thing. Whatever the case may be, right? If it's intentional, if it's not intentional, that's something different, because sometimes women are going through menopause, or there's a medical reason. So, so we have to problem solve. Right.
No.
Did that answer your question though? Did that answer it, John?
Yes, it did. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Good.
Oh, wow. Yeah, no, that was very insightful. But we want to shift gears. Before we shift gears, make sure you go ahead and you subscribe. You can do all that good stuff. And we want you in the comments. Subscribe. We want you in the comments. Make sure you're in the comments. But I got a question. For the people listening. If you ever been betrayed, what was the hardest part of moving on? I want y'all to let me know. Drop in the comments. Let me know, what was the hardest part of moving on if you were the person that was betrayed, right? So we want to switch gears, because we want to touch on all these people. So we're going to go to the person who actually did the cheating, that person, right? So what are the main psychological, emotional reasons people cheat?
So, as you know, everybody's different, right? So everybody's reasons are going to be different, but I'm going to give you a few that I have heard. And one is alienation of affection, right? Okay. A woman is not being intimate with her husband, or it's just too infrequent, right? It's just too infrequent. So I've heard that. I've also heard
a lot. I'm sure it a lot.
It's too infrequent. I've also heard that the woman has lost respect in terms of how she interacts with her husband. So he doesn't feel respected by his wife. And guess what? There's always somebody shimmying up somewhere that shows respect to him. And that is a very dangerous situation at that point. So I think that a lot of times when men are cheating, it's a lack of respect that he feels from his wife, or he is not getting what he needs out of his wife. Some men are feeling very insecure. They are very insecure within the relationship, and they choose someone that makes them feel more secure. Okay. If you need an example of that, or are we good?
Yes, give me an
Okay.
example.
Yeah, break that one down.
All right.
I've
And
heard
I
that
think
before.
it might blow up your comments, but I'm going to give it anyway. So if we have a woman, for example, who makes a lot more money than her husband, a lot more money than her husband.
Yeah.
You know the comments, and
Say no
I
more.
love
We got
y'all.
it. We got
Love y'all. Okay. Makes a lot more money. No. What that's fine until problems come up, right? And then and then what will happen is sometimes the men will feel less than in that situation. But somebody shimmies up that maybe doesn't make as much money as him and has a more of a she looks up to him, she's honoring him in a way, and this could be somebody at work. Usually it's somebody that they're in contact with frequently, and she's honoring him in a way that he doesn't feel honored by his wife, so he can slide on up down that slippery slope that way too.
Yeah, that slope got grease and butter and oil and everything on that.
What's so crazy about this is I just had a conversation with someone yesterday, and they was talking about, because what he said was, if I ever remarry, I would never marry a woman who makes more money than me.
He said that.
He said because the whole dynamic is different when they make more money than you. They talk to you differently, they treat you differently. It's a whole thing. I just had this conversation yesterday, and I wasn't looking for this conversation. The conversation called me, and so I was like, wow. It was, and as you're saying, it's crazy because I didn't even think about that. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Because that's the first thing he said. He wouldn't do it.
And I think based on how things are today in today's society, that's more prevalent because women do have the power and the ability to out earn men, especially in the Black community. You see it a lot. And what I hear, the narrative behind that is it's more of you're intimidated by me, which to me suggests that there's a power dynamic that I'm trying to navigate, because money, whoever make the more money got the voice in the house. And so if he come in like, babe, I think we should do this, and she making more money.
Because and this is funny. My wife, I make more money than my wife, and my wife does not listen to me. She and playfully, she runs the house. I couldn't even imagine if she made twice the money that I make, because we have a banter back and forth. Oh, this, it's playful. But even in that, if she made more money, it would be different. And I can see that. And so, and I'm curious, when you in counseling with those people, how do you navigate the financial waters? Because those waters are different. Because she's not gonna make less money. And if she, go ahead.
So this is how I navigate it, right? So what people have to understand, that a marriage is a partnership, right? So it's a paradigm shift, and not looking at it like, okay, I make this money, you make that money, and we're in it becomes competition, it becomes competitive, and that's what happens, and that's where we're wrong. When we look at the marriage as a partnership, and all the money is going into one bucket, and I'm not saying that you can't have your own accounts, but there needs to be a joint account in marriage. There needs to be a joint account in marriage. Okay. And then you can have your individual accounts, right? But when we're talking about women and marriages who are following the dynamic and sort of the hierarchy of the family, a woman who makes more money, right, still needs to follow the dynamics that were put forth by what Paul has said, right? In that the man is still the head of the house. The money has nothing to do with it. Now, does that play out in reality?
Yeah.
It's a tough one, It's a tough one, but you have to be intentional about that and seeing that we're partners. Now, making twice as much, that's a lot. But if we're talking about just, you're kind of there, but she makes a little bit more, I think we can manage that a little bit better. But it really has to do with how that's on the wife. That's the accountability of her. She needs, you already know what it is when you're getting your man. So if you want him to make more money, get behind him, get behind his dreams, help him to make more money, help him to start a business, help him to create. That is part of the role of being his easer. I need people to look that up. Easer.
Yes. Helper. Yes.
Am I saying it right? Ezer, easer, whatever. The name,
Ezer,
the Hebrew.
Right.
In the you know how we do in the Hebrew. Look up helpmate in the Hebrew. And that is what it is. It's not, we're not in competition. Unfortunately, that's how it's looked.
Yeah. I think society has created this competition, and it's like they threw it out there and we grabbed it, and now society is just like, let me just mess up all this stuff, because that's what it's doing. Yes. It's ripping through us. I mean, it's horrific how bad this stuff has gotten with that. But looking at cheaters, the person who cheats, do they typically go the route of remorse? Like even when they're talking to you, do they go the route of remorse, or is it more a justification? Which one do they kind of go with first? The justification or the remorse?
The justification is first. The remorse comes if they're caught or if they decide to share it with their spouse. So the justification is always first. They always have reasons for why they cheated. And you know what? The reasons sound valid, but we remember there were those other three options.
Right. We got to highlight those, because I don't know if people really take a look. Because when you're in an emotional state, and you correct me if I'm wrong, the emotions kind of make you make certain decisions. And I say this because I remember, like, when I lost my mom, I didn't drink before I lost my mom, but she died in October. November was my first time getting drunk.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, just the emotions of it, do we tend to lean towards the destructive behavior?
So the emotions of a marriage that is not what you want it to be, is that what we're talking about?
Yeah,
because you're trying. So
that's
to do
not a
something.
Crisis. That's not necessarily a crisis, right? And it takes a minute. Like what you're describing is a crisis and a trauma. So typically we're not dealing with crisis and trauma when people cheat. This is something that they're unhappy with over time. And I'm going to tell you that it is a lack of communication that brings us to the point of distance. Come on now. That it brings us to the point of distance, to where they feel like, this is the only option I have, because what am I going to do? I can't leave. We got this, we got the house, the kids, this, that. So it's easier to cheat and get that need met. Yes.
It's easier.
And we're not doing that to try to make them, I want to say not control, but we're trying to get a rise or get something out of them to say, hey, when you talk to you blue in the face, when you're doing all these things, trying to get a rise, trying to get a pulse from them, and you can't get it, and there you go with those other three things. But if it had to be, because I have thought in the past that you might need to cheat. You might need to cheat to get her to start doing what you want to do, but it always kind of backfires. And now that you're dragging those other three things, I see what you're talking about.
There's some options, John. There's some options, which is to really, get effective communication, because a lot of times, couples get into this pattern and this dynamic of how they communicate, and it's ineffective. So I don't know how to please you anymore. You don't know how to please me. That's a dangerous place. That's the dangerous place. But if you look for help in a third party, in therapy, you can get to the place before cheating. You can get to the place of really kind of getting heard. A lot of times what I hear is men do not feel heard by their partners. And I'm not beating up on the women, right? Because women sometimes don't feel heard by their partners. So you have to feel heard in the person. And spouse, you know, I don't use spouse a lot, and I don't use husband or wife when I'm talking to them. I say you're a person, right? Out of 8.2 billion people on the planet, this is the person you chose. This is your person that you're doing life with. So how do you want to treat your person? How do you think you need to communicate with your person, right? Changing, again, the way that you're looking at it. So that it's like, you know what? Yeah, this is my person. Like, I'm the only person who can give her the things that she needs. She's the only person who can give me the things that I need. So maybe we need to look at this with a little bit more emotional intelligence.
Wow. Now, you said something the last time we had you on. You talked about communication and what communication really is. You said it's landing your point. Could you explain that one more time?
Yes. So I'd like to quote Alan Greenspan first, okay?
Okay.
And this is how I open my couple retreats. And he said, I know you think you understand what you thought I said, but I'm not sure you realize that what you heard is not what I meant. Can I say that one more time?
Yes, indeed.
Yes, please.
I know you think you understand what you thought I said, but I'm not sure you realize that what you heard is not what I meant. So in communication, there is a lot of assumptions. You think that you can assume what your person is thinking or feeling. You can't. I don't care how long you've been with them. You know their actions. Is that a hand raised, John? You raising your hand?
No, I'm trying to remember what you said. So when I repeat it back later, I'm gonna repeat this later.
He's trying to use this. You just gave him some arsenal.
Yeah, I know you think you understand.
Yes.
What you thought I said.
Yes.
But I'm not sure you realize that what you heard, my love, is not what I meant.
Not what I meant. Wow.
I meant get in that kitchen.
If you're hearing, right? If you're hearing something different than what I meant, now you're rocking with what you heard, even though that's not a fact.
Yes.
So that's what I mean by it has to land. Communication means that you got what I was trying to communicate, that I understood what you were trying to communicate.
Let me say this. I think they're going to thank you for getting her back on, because I didn't understand at the time when we had shown how much you had to offer people.
Oh man.
And I'm seeing it now. I'm like, wow, all of this. And we had her on before, and we didn't really get an opportunity to see how much you bring and offer people, man. And I'm thankful that you are back, gracing us with your presence, and can be a blessing to God's people.
Oh yeah.
And listen, I appreciate you having me here.
Yes. And like I said, people kept responding to the previous video, and all I was getting was, let her talk. They were like, let her talk. And you do have a wealth of information, so that's why we want to take a step back and let you really dive into this, because just that communication piece alone, right? You heard what I said, but did you hear what I meant? Is huge.
Oh, very much so.
Huge.
It is huge.
Very much so.
And most people think that talking is communicating.
No, talking is talking.
Right. Because I've heard that women communicate better than men, but in actuality, they talk more.
And that don't mean they communicate. That just mean they talk.
Right.
Yes.
But if you don't hear what I meant on either side, if you don't hear what I meant, then communication has not happened. And I remember you said something about landing your point.
Yes. So here's how I'm going to take a step further and make a presumption, not an assumption, that you want to know, how do we know we landed our point, right?
Yes.
I love what's called a check-in, right? So, and I do this. Okay, this is what I heard you say. That's a check-in. And then I'm going to tell you what I heard, and that gives you the opportunity to correct it and say, no, that's not what I meant. Or you can say to me, what did you get from what I just said? This isn't about, what do you want for dinner? We're not using this in that case. It's when we're having real conversations that we need to talk about, that maybe there's some, emotion involved. What did you hear me say? What did you get from what I said? Or, like I said, the opposite. This is what I heard you say. I do that all the time. I do it with my clients. I do it with my kids. I do it with anybody. What did you hear me say? What did you get from that?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So then that way you're checking in with each other so that there's an opportunity to correct it. And often, I don't know a percentage, but often you will see that either they missed a key point or they heard something totally different than what you said.
Yes. Yes. Because I teach a lot of concepts, and I tell people if you don't share the same concept, it leads to misconception. And so we got to see, my words are forming a picture in your mind, but is it the same picture that I'm speaking from? I got to make sure the pictures actually match.
Yes.
And so depending on your history, depending on things that happened to you, how you hear is a critical part. And so if the cheater feels driven to cheat because I don't feel heard, I don't feel respected, and all of this, then we might help a lot of people with just clearing up this communication thing.
Yes. Yes. Because if people are, I call it the misfiring of communication, right? They're missing it. They're missing it. It's not landing. And so people are feeling isolated, even within their marriage, right? And when we feel isolated and when we feel hurt, and let's not even think about, like you just said, Derek, people are really a compilation of all of the things that they've experienced and the meaning that they made of those experiences, right? So they have a specific view. So if I feel like, if I'm, not getting my needs met, so I'm a man right now, I'm not getting my needs met. And you know what? I actually never did get my needs met, right? I wasn't heard. I was the youngest of 5 and nobody ever heard me then. I played football. I wanted to say this or that. I wanted to bring, my own, and the coach said, shut up. And so through my whole life, nobody has ever heard me. And now I'm in a marriage where she's not hearing me. So there could be this knee-jerk kind of reaction in that space as well, of not really understanding what the wife is bringing to the table and really trying to fill a traumatic need from the past. There's that too.
Wow. Yeah. My mind is just like spinning right now because I'm thinking about conversations I've had with people, even conversations I've had with my wife. And it's like sometimes you'll get to a point to where you say, you know what, it's pointless. I ain't. So I'm not saying nothing because she's not listening. That's what we say. You ain't gonna listen to me no way. So I'm just gonna shut up. How close is that person who shuts down like that? How close are they to that slippery slope of cheating?
So shutting down is also known as stonewalling.
Stonewalling. Wow. Yeah.
Okay. And if you allow me, I'm going to go through what John Gottman is, I guess, the godfather of couples therapy. And I do use some of his work. And one of the things that he and his wife, they worked together, came up with is called the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse. Okay.
Yes.
The 4 Horsemen, and you can Google it. It's right there. And so there are 4 things that couples can do. And they have in their research, they have seen that if you have one or more of these things that I'm about to explain, they can predict divorce with over 90% accuracy. Okay.
Wow. 90. Woo.
Yeah. Stonewalling is one of them. Not if you stonewall once in a while. I don't want to talk about it. That's not what I'm talking about. If that is a way that you consistently handle the issues, is stonewalling. That is a way that you can walk yourself on into the divorce court.
Wow.
One is, I'm doing them off the top of my head, Lord help me. So one is criticism. When you are consistently, these are all consistently criticizing your spouse. One is being defensive. If everything that your spouse says to you, and they could be saying it in love, they can be saying it, just in conversation, you are defending yourself. Okay. And the last one is contempt. When you have contempt, and that shows in body language and on people's face and how they talk to each other, contempt. So those are the four. You have contempt, and we're not talking about once in a while. We're talking about this is basically how your relationship operates in contempt, criticism, defensiveness, and stonewalling. Those are the four horsemen of the apocalypse of your marriage.
Wow.
Yes. Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Don't do that.
That's wow. No, that's great information.
Don't do that.
I don't want to stay on the cheater too long because we can really,
let's get off him. Let's get off him.
We can go in. We can go in. But for anybody that's listening, do you think cheaters regret their actions? Do you think they regret their actions, or do they just regret getting caught? Right? Y'all let us know in the comments. Let us know. Do you think they regret what they did, or do they just regret getting caught? All right. So now we want to switch gears to the side piece, or the Mr. or the mistress, right? Because one thing we tend to do is assume that when you say cheater, it's a guy.
Yeah.
Right. We like to make that assumption first. But I would venture to say in today's society, you probably get but looking at the person who's being cheated with, right? What kind of people typically become the other person? Is it always intentional, or is it accidental?
Okay, so this again, there's the dynamics of men and women, right? Mm-hmm. So if the male is the side piece, a lot of times they don't really care about that. They don't care about being the side piece most often. Okay, I'll stop there and allow you guys to ask me questions if you need to. But when the woman is the side piece, sometimes that's right where she wants to be. There are women who do not want the responsibility of marriage. Wow. And so, right, you might have women who, they want to come and go as they please. As they say, I don't want to wash no man's drawers. You have women who are like that. Right. They don't want it, but they want a man. So they're very comfortable being in that position. Then you have women who are actually have feelings for and are in love with that man. Yes. And so that's the dangerous one, because those types of feelings can create, weird behavior. You know what I'm saying? They can, you can lose big in that, because once you're ready to get rid of that person, they have nothing to lose by bringing your castle down.
Oh boy. Yeah. Yes, indeed.
Please let me say that again. When you get rid of the side chick, if you do, they have nothing to lose by bringing your castle down. You done got rid of her. You're done. Yeah. Right. And a lot of women can be treacherous like that and do that. But I think the question is, who is that person that gets into that role? And sometimes it's accidental. So they don't know the man is married initially, and they move into the situation. They're not looking at the red flags, and then they're caught up. So now they're dealing with this married man. So you have those that know and those that don't know. And that's probably the bulk of it. And then everything in between.
Now, I know a man, God rest his soul, or I knew a man who he was a pastor. His wife died. His wife passed. He had 2 side pieces. He had 2. So now the number 1 spot is open. Number 1 spot is open. One of the side pieces was more docile, more agreeable. The other one, she was that fire. She was that firecracker. She was that, passion, which pretty sure he liked. Pretty sure he liked that, but he liked the agreeableness of the docile one as well.
You got to fight with that other one.
Right. So he had a choice to make on who's going to be the next first lady.
You picked this one. You picked the docile.
He went with the docile one.
Duh.
And the other one went scorched earth on him.
I know.
Everything he ever told her in confidence, the pillow talk, anything about anybody, people closest to him, people. She told everybody everything. Everything.
Yes.
And so,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
when you said that, like the one who is really emotionally into it, she ain't the one that, listen, I just want you to come by every now and then. She's the one, especially, I see this position open now. I can move up.
Yeah, but there's nothing like somebody who is with you trying to advance as they with you. The way they do things, the way they cook for you, the way they serve you in bed, the way they do for you. There like my wife always say, you touching me with purpose. There is purpose behind what she's doing and how she's doing it. And when that goes awry, I'm gonna do everything I can to set you on fire.
Because there's a return on investment that is being sought.
Yes.
And there was no return on the investment.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow. So as a therapist, do you ever have women who've been the side piece come in and like looking to heal from the trauma of that relationship, if you can call it a relationship, going wrong? Do you ever have that?
Yes. And it is absolutely a relationship. It's absolutely a relationship. I mean, it's if there were not a marriage, what you would visualize in terms of their time spent and all of that, it is a relationship. Yes, I do have people who come in with that and they understand the position that they were in. They feel some degree of guilt. Then they have some degree of fear of this happening to them in the future, right? So these women are, they suffer from self-esteem issues, not always, but the ones that are really harmed by it, their self-esteem suffers. They wonder, why did I accept that? They start to think about, and it takes work, but I start to ask them, why don't you deserve your own, right? Why don't you deserve your own? And a lot of times what I hear is, well, all men cheat, so what's the difference? So, you're battling a lot of these worldly concepts. And so I have to take that as an individual basis and try to see, what in the background or what type of prior relationships that they had to have them make this decision to stay in a relationship with a man who is married, who has a primary person, and you're secondary, and you're always going to be made to feel secondary. So, what do you get out of that?
I'm just curious. As most of the time, you tell me if I'm wrong, and I'm sure you will. But most of the time, people want what they want, whether you belong to somebody else or not. And the people generally that want them, they don't want like they want the guy that belongs or the woman that belongs to somebody else.
Wow.
And so because I want you, I'm willing to put up with whatever you do and how I can get you, so that I can pacify what I want.
Yeah.
Am I way off? Am I crazy?
No, you're on. I'll do whatever I want to get you, but then I question them. So if they're in front of me, no, I don't do judgment, right? Because that's not what therapy is about, right? Therapy is about helping them to understand themselves, right? To make the best decisions for their lives. So what I'm asking is, what is it that you really want, though? And so when we talk about, take away this relationship. So they talk about they want this and they want that and they want to travel and they want to be able to, have times by the fire and they want to blah, 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 blah. And I said, well, do you have that with this person?
No, just got the weekends. He's got the weekend.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's one day a week.
Yeah.
That was even a song promoting that. You remember SZA, The Weekend?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can have them all week. I got them on the weekend.
That is horrible. That is horrible.
Listen, horrible. But that's their reality.
Wow.
That's some people's reality. They have bought into that's all I can do, or they have convinced themselves that that's what it is and that's what they want. And see, once you get in therapy with me, it's like, we're going to pull back these layers and see if this is really what you want.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or if this is only what you think you can have.
Oh, what you think you can have. Wow. So it's a value estimation on the
Absolutely.
Wow.
Because when you actually write down, and you know, I have homework in therapy. There's homework. We can't just huddle for 50 minutes and then come back and huddle again. Like, no. You run the play, you know, during the week. So there's homework, right? So I have them think about, and I'll say, okay, write down, what do you want? Forget about the man you're with, the past, future. What do you want? What do you think you need as a person? They write that stuff down, and then we talk about, is that what you're getting?
Oh, wow.
Right. And then they have to look at it.
Yeah.
And they have to realize that ain't what I'm getting.
Do they start cussing? Do they curse? Because
they don't start cussing. They
Well,
start getting, you know, the shoulders start dropping a little bit. You
Oh,
know?
Yeah. So let me ask this real quick. If there's an instance where the man leaves the relationship he's in for the side piece, how does that typically work out? From what you've experienced talking to people, how does that typically play out? He leaves, he actually goes and decides to make a relationship with the side piece. How does that typically work out?
So I'm going to use a person. I'm not going to tell who it is, but in my family, that actually happened. Someone left for the side piece, and they have been married for many years. That's the anomaly, right? Because what happens is, when someone leaves for the side piece, typically, if a man actually goes through with that, he meant that thing. He really cares about that woman, in my opinion. Okay. But the woman, after the honeymoon is over, starts to question everything about him, because she remembers.
She was the side
piece. She knows the behavior.
Yes.
So the behavior even appears like it might be that. Now we're having an issue with trust and where are you, and all of that type of stuff, where there's no freedom to be yourself. So it can become a very unhappy relationship.
Wow.
It usually is. Yeah.
Wow. So, because we want to get to some other stuff before we wrap this up. So anybody listening, if you've ever been the side person or know someone who was, how did it really end? How did it really end, and was it worth it? Y'all let us know. Drop in the comments and let us know. So we want to look at the whole fallout, especially the psychological and emotional fallout of this. So what are the most common long-term consequences of infidelity for all three of the people that you've seen?
Yeah, so all three different in terms of the position that they played in the situation. So for the man, if his wife forgives him, then I think, and they work that through, right? And I talked earlier about acknowledgement, validation, and the reason why, that relationship can become stronger, right? Wow. If the woman was the one who cheated, I've even seen that become stronger as well, because they realized where they lacked in their relationship, and the why, remember, that is very important, so that we know how to avoid that in the future. So I have seen that work out. But the long-term effects, typically the relationship just starts to disintegrate and disintegrate and disintegrate until people are roommates. People don't like each other. There's a lot of resentment and all of that. And they're leading towards, separation or divorce often. The person who has been cheated on, there's a lot that goes on in that relationship. I've seen a couple of them try harder. Once they found out that their husband cheated, they tried harder in that moment to make sure that he did not leave. And that's an interesting dynamic, because, and I said, what is that? But I really figured out what it is for a lot of women, is that they're already traumatized. So they cannot take the extra trauma of him leaving and going and being with that woman.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Yeah.
So they try to keep things as normal as possible. They stay in that. They try to do, but that has an end date. That has a shelf life.
Mm.
And then the anger comes in at some point, and those issues start to happen then. Lack of trust. That's just lack of trust, right? So they have to, if they want to stay in that marriage, the trust has to be rebuilt. And with the trust being rebuilt, I do want to say this: the man who wants the trust, let's say it's the man who cheated, right? I'm not banging on the man, but whoever cheated, but we'll use the man, right? We're just going to use it for the purposes of this. He has to do the things within reason that his wife needs to rebuild that trust. He has to do what his wife needs to rebuild that trust. If she needs to look at that phone, if she needs to, the check-ins, if she needs whatever it is that she needs. Now, but that's for a period of time. She can't do that forever. So I tell the wife, you have to be receiving that and healing during that process so that there's an end time to that.
Yeah.
Right. You don't forever get to look at the phone. You don't forever have to make him check in, but there is a building process. And during that, her responsibility, if she wants to stay in that, a lot of times women do, is that you're healing during that so that you guys can start to release that portion of your relationship and start to move forward. Yeah.
Yeah. And I was wondering, like this, what you just said, how do they move on without the cheating defining the relationship? I think about from Mary, the one sister from Mary, who's
Mary.
He said Mary, whose husband, it was very public because they had a reality show that he cheated on her. And it seems like that now became the defining thing of their marriage. It's the thing that people are pulling her on stages for. And she drags him along, and I'm looking at his face and I'm like, how long can you be this person?
Yeah.
How long? So how do they move forward without the cheating being the defining thing of the whole relationship?
Yes. One of the things that I encourage, right? Because I work for the client. So I can't make them do anything, but I encourage them to stop talking about that other person. First and foremost, cut them out of the marriage. We're going to talk about the action. We're not going to talk about the person. Okay. So get them out. There is something in psychology that is called externalizing the problem. So when you are in a relationship, and this is from family therapy, actually, but it applies to marriages. When there is a problem that comes up, it is not you guys have the problem in the middle and you're fighting each other. You take that problem, externalize it outside of your marriage, and the two of you are problem solving. We kick that person out of the marriage and we talk about what do we need to do to solve this problem. Okay. Yeah. So that's the first thing, because as long as that person is still brought up, they're still in the marriage.
Yeah.
As long as the cheating itself is brought up all the time. No, we're not bringing it up all the time. We're doing the work, right? It's very specific work that I lay out, right? Based on what they need. Very specific work. And as they're doing the work, the relationship is building, and that person becomes less of an issue because the person is a symptom of the problem, not the problem itself.
Wow.
The person is a symptom of the problem, not the problem itself.
The person is a symptom of the problem, not the problem themselves. The
person is the toothache. Yeah. The problem is you need the root canal.
Oh. You just help somebody. You just bless somebody real good.
I hope so.
You bless me on the way home. I'm gonna be thinking about this on the way to the house.
That's good. I hope so. Yes.
So real quick before we get out of here, just our final question for you. If you could give one piece of advice to prevent infidelity, what would that be? Okay.
I like this question. So first, John is learning about the other three options. One, I don't think is really an option. You can't just sit and not do anything when you're unhappy, right? You get assistance. You get assistance from a therapist, a good, not just any therapist, a therapist that is trained in couple therapy, okay? And then what you do is, now this is the practical thing that when you're home and you're thinking about it and you're meditating on how you want to do this and you want to go here and you want to get to the hotel and you're meditating on the cheating situation, go ahead and do that. Go ahead and do that. But I want you to think it all the way through. After the night in the hotel, after you might have a little breakfast in the room, and now you're going home. Now you're living it out afterward. What does that look like? So don't just think of the fun in the moment, the excitement and this and that. Think about, once that is over, how does this impact my life? And really think that through, because that can actually make you stop and think before you do that. But to know that you have options before making a decision like that, because it can really, really devastate families, not just your own nuclear family, but everybody around you, friendships, extended family, all of that. It can devastate, but especially your own children and yourself and your spouse. So I'm saying, think it, don't just think about the bedroom, go past the bedroom and think about, oh shoot, might she get pregnant? What if she tells my wife? Oh, what if this finds out? Oh, what if my kids find out? What if this is, did she get a picture? Did she, you know, was she was there a videotape? You know, all of that, you need to think about that. And if you have to, if you feel guilty enough, some people do, John, don't mess with me, to actually share that it happened. What does that look like?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You sitting in marriage class and you the subject. You the subject.
Or they pulling you on and off stage.
Oh yeah. Because I say that
you done cheated.
Old girl's husband, I hate to see it. I hate to see it, because it's like, now that she has a platform, it's like they gave her a platform behind the cheating, being a survivor of a man who cheated on her. She drags him on stage, and I'm like, I'm looking at his face like, bruh, how much more can you put up with this?
Being a survivor.
Being a survivor, being a survivor,
there's
right?
No healing. There's no healing in that. If they keep doing that, there's no healing. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah. But listen, this has been really good. And we could spend way up, because we didn't touch on what happens when the adulterous relationship creates a child outside the house. We didn't even get into that.
Is that another podcast?
That's a whole other dynamic, you know. That caveat is huge. The caveat is huge. But real quick before we go, just kind of let people know more about you and how they can get in touch with you if they really want to get in touch. Because I had a lot of people asking, how can I get in touch with her? So let's just let them know real quick.
Okay, so Instagram is probably the easiest. It's Kingdom_Therapist. Easy. Kingdom_Therapist. You'll see my face there. My phone number is 704-258-1611. That comes directly to me. So I do see individuals, I see couples, and I see families. Okay. I do couple retreats as well as group therapy for couples and for individuals. So there's a lot that I do. Consulting work, if you have, if you're a small business owner or even corporate, because I grew up in corporate America. This is actually a second career for me. I do workshops on employee relationships, right? Which includes a lot of that communication, employee relationships, and also stress reduction to keep people from being signed out. Because I sign out people from work for stress. So so Instagram, Kingdom_Therapist, and phone number 704-258-1611.
Right. And I'll be sure to include all of that information. And so you got to go into the, the comments to really check it. So I'm gonna put it there. But listen, we definitely appreciate you coming on with us once again. We just got to keep bringing you back, because listen,
it's fun.
Like, people are falling in love with you and the information that you're giving, and they seeing all of the value.
I don't know about that.
I'm telling you, man. I see the comment.
John be hating on me. But
Hey,
But
real
yes, I would love to come back. I'd love to come back. Just, you know how to reach me.
okay, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. And shout out to the audience. Mwah. I hope this helps you.
Absolutely. And on that note, if there's anything that you heard that really resonated with you, let us know in the comments, right? Let us know in the comments what was one point that really resonated with you from what Genesis shared about this particular topic. And if you enjoyed the show, tell somebody.
Tell somebody. Don't be calling us talking about the show. Engage with us.
Right.
Get on there and talk about it. Talk about I'm sure there's some chats or something going on. Get in the chat and talk about it and engage back and forth with it. Do not call us and tell us how great the show was. We know the show is great. We are the best in the world. And remember, don't try this at home.
Listen, don't forget, like, share, subscribe. We're going to catch y'all next time. Y'all have a good one. Peace out.
Peace.